Body Parts, 1991. Directed by Eric Red. Starring Jeff Fahey, Lindsay Webb, and Kim Delaney. After being in a horrible car accident, a psychologist is given a second chance when he receives an experimental arm transplant. Only question is, who was the donor? This film was recommended by a fan. Thanks for the suggestion. In a genre that has its share of cliches and derivatives, it's the titles that exercise restraint and take things in a different direction that tend to stand out more. Such is the case with Eric Red's Body Parts, a film that manages to take the classic limb transplant trope and do something interesting with it. It should come as no surprise either. As a writer-turned-director behind genre standouts like The Hitcher and Near Dark, Eric Red brought a clear outside-the-box mentality to a fairly conventional premise. Now, it's a body horror film in the literal sense of the word. The human body is involved, but you aren't going to say ew every 10 seconds while watching it. Instead, it focuses on the discomfort of having a foreign limb transplanted to your body and not knowing who the donor was, which would be unnerving for anyone. The entire film is successfully built around tension. You can sense that something is wrong even when nothing is wrong. So when they do inevitably happen, you get equal parts relief and distress out of it. The biggest thing I'd like to commend this film for is avoiding the gradual adoption of the donor's traits and behaviors. While a classic staple in transplant stories, straying from it actually makes the film even more unsettling for the audience. You're never quite sure what's coming next, and that uncertainty feeds into the overall progression of the plot. Another way this film successfully subverts your expectations is the nightmarish mundanity that the transplant surgery is portrayed with. There's no grisly operating sequence or foreboding atmosphere, just a very grounded but urgent conversation and a brief procedure bathed in sterile fluorescent lighting. Again, the lack of obvious choices actually makes the film even more disturbing than stylized ones. Everyone in the cast delivers a wonderfully grounded performance, which helps the plausibility and tension of the film land effectively. Even genre favorite Brad Dourif is reeled in for this one, playing a harmless artist who also received a limb from the same donor as our protagonist and tries reassuring him that nothing is wrong. The film feels like an adaptation of a novel, but surprisingly isn't. Credits for the story were given to Pierre Boulot and Thomas Narcejac, though this was reportedly done to avoid potential legal issues due to the similarities the screenplay had with their novel Choice Cuts. The film does go off the rails a little in the third act as a result of important elements not being foreshadowed sooner in the plot, which is the only real misstep. The conclusion itself is still solid, it's just not as well supported by what comes before it. Verdict? Recommended. Graft this one onto your watch list. That concludes this week's review. If there's any obscure sci-fi or horror film you'd like to suggest, feel free to leave a comment below. Make sure to tune in next time for another thrilling, low-budget venture.